Hello. Good evening, everyone. Oh, sorry. Hi. How you doing? Hey, thanks for being here and out there. Really thrilled to welcome Chessy Normile, Sue Landers, and Jordan Dunn this evening. What a lineup! Woo! So thanks to the three of you and to all of you and to all of you. So just like some announcements and then we'll dive in here. The first is that we have books for sale out there. You may have noticed that, just a couple. But in particular by, of course, Chessy, Sue, and Jordan. So avail yourself of that. Fantastic books by all three of these humans. And then I just want to mention some things that are coming up. This event kicks off a packed spring season, which also happens to be our final sort of months here, as programs will end at the end of May here, and then we'll sort of be preparing for our move. If you've heard of that, that's happening. If you haven't, you can come talk to us about it. But so yeah, like an incredible run of programs coming up that will mark the sort of final events we're hosting here on Locust Street before we move, including, well, this amazing exhibition of work by Anne Kingsbury, which, yeah. Just astounding, absolutely wonderful. So just come enjoy the exhibition, like multiple times, many times between now and the end of May. Also, there will be a conversation between Anne and Deborah Bremer the afternoon of April 25th. So that's, you can get into it a little more deeply. More immediately, next weekend, Saturday, March 21st at 7 p.m., we're hosting Laura Mimosa Montes with Roberto Harrison. That's going to be great. That'll be a really good reading. I'm sure many of you know Roberto, and then Laura Mimosa Montes is an incredible writer. So great duo. Next Saturday. Then Thursday, March 26th at 7 p.m., we'll be hosting Anselm Berrigan for a talk titled Regrettably Yours on Being Influenced, delivered as part of the Bagley Wright lecture series. So that'll be exciting. That's 7 p.m. Thursday the 26th. And then there's just so much more. I'm just gonna I'm not giving you dates now. You'll just have to stay tuned and find, but over the course of the next months, we'll be having a cinema screening series that's in mid-May. Janelle Vanderkellen and Taka Suzuki, who've been hosting film screenings here for quite a while, and then now we're doing so in a more concentrated form over a single weekend. That'll be, those are always incredible, so mid-May for that. Just, look up the dates for these. They'll be up there on the internet, in the newsletter that's coming soon, and so on. But readings from, among others, Soam Patel, Mauricio Killing Guevara, Brenda Cardenas, Alan Felsenthal, and Kendra Sullivan, and a farewell weekend in late May that's going to be pretty stellar, and so stay tuned for all of these, more about all of these things, but it's just, I won't go through the whole list, but it's going to be a fun couple months. Starting tonight. This is everything before this. Not fun, but starting tonight, the fun is coming, finally. No, it's all been very fun, of course. But no, okay, I'm going to stop talking now. But come to other events is the point. And I'm not going to stop talking, actually, because now I'm going to introduce our first reader, who is Chessy Normile of Chessy Normile's writing. Lee makes a note of the poems, quote, "Fidelity to their moment of composition and their drive not toward non-meaning, but meanings beyond the precincts of mentality and its calculations. And in them, it's often the case that things unfold in a dizzying simultaneity where the poem presupposes, quote, you're thinking this list will continue in some supposed order, But chronology, geography, even geology and cosmology don't hold sway when the poems move in, quote, earth time, sacred time, tropical time, star time, atomic time, where death begins ticking the moment you're born, and the, quote, grass grows backwards soon as you shut the door. Also, the poems are frequently funny as hell, but then that makes me think of this line. People are like, haha, your poems are funny, and that's a kind of miracle. I'm grateful. It's nice to share the joke of my existence with you. So now I feel bad about laughing, but let's all maybe laugh and surely feel things with Chessy Normile, who is the author of Great Exodus, Great Wall, Great Party, winner of the 2020 American Poetry Review Honickman First Book Prize, and is editor of Girl Blood Info zines. She was a Ronald Wallace Poetry Fellow at UW-Madison and is currently poet in residence at Ripon College. Chessy, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Mike. That was so cool to hear. It makes me want to read from that book, but I don't think I will. I use it as a folder now. I put stuff in it in case I think to read from it, but 6 years have passed. So I'm going to read you some new poems. This is called Applied Theory. I have a book on the condition of postmodernity, having not even figured out the condition of modernity or the definition of condition. I shan't be reading it. I start a new job tomorrow as assistant to a man who bakes and decorates wedding cakes. In what style? Sarah asks on the phone. Clean edges, abstract, I tell her, as if we discuss cake styles often. I'm just quoting what he told me. Clean edges. Half the things I say, I don't really understand. This is called Record. Winter, 1999. My sister and I built a beautiful igloo. I remember thinking, well, this is our home now. We spent so much time in there, I can still picture the way the light came through the thinner parts, glacial blue, how it was warm inside, or at least we imagined it was, and how spacious. Last night, building a second, Tom pointed out I was using 8-year-old dimensions. The front door so narrow, I had to slide in on my back. Inside, the space was only as big as my head, chest, and shoulders. I could feel my body's distance from what it's been, a distance like mist I carry inside a balloon down a corridor of needles. What if you were really able to write down what happened to you? But it would take so long, and as you wrote it, more would happen. This is called Towns. Driving here, we stopped at a gas station outside Buffalo, New York. Do you have a restroom? I asked the girl behind the counter. No, she said, and I feel your pain. I work an 8-hour shift and have to wait till I get home. That's terrible, I tell her, like she doesn't know. She asked if we're driving on the highway. I tell her yes. Then my recommendation for you is get back on the highway until you reach a different town. We keep driving, arrive in America's Best Value Inn at 2:30 a.m. The front desk is empty, save for a stack of local newspapers with the headline, Sex Offenders Found Not in Compliance. In bed, we can't stop laughing in the dark about that being an in-house newspaper. Hotel news, available at check-in. How honest that would be. I have a bad track record when it comes to picking hotels, so I'm happy at the buglessness, the lack of mud on the walls, that in lifting the covers we find no blood on the sheets. We'd been having a profound talk on our drive, where I asked, 5 years into our marriage, what's your relationship to God? You said spiritually you were an ontologist, which felt clarifying because politically you were a materialist. And somewhere along the way you said the word hermeneutics, which made me laugh because it sounded like hermit, nudist, eunuch. But you told me it meant meaning messenger, a word for how meaning is transmitted through language. Oh, I said, recalling a few months ago in bed when I looked up from the book I was reading and asked you to explain post-structuralism to me, my hair wet and soaking through the pillow and you almost asleep, answering me with your eyes closed. I felt like all the terms were clicking together now. Words were either the messengers of meaning or they were the meaning itself. I love the word itself, the thing, the world itself, immanence being my definition of poetry because to hell with transcendence, transcendence is for the birds. The thing with driving is you follow this unfolding black ribbon through the dark, lighting it with your chest as you move. And it can feel like each town materializes around you and disappears when you leave it. But that girl is still working in that gas station, which still has no bathroom. And those sex offenders are still not in compliance. And our conversation about God and being concluded in Ohio. This is called New Season. My friend Mandy gave me this prompt, which was to invent a new season. I would give it to you too. New season. It all takes place underground, and in the dirt and the dampness, we say this season's prayer. I want my baby back, baby back, baby back. It is the song from the restaurant Chili's, but without a conclusion of ribs. Without the ribs, it becomes a song of longing. And we sing this in the dark while the termites light the black with movement. Okay, that's the season I've invented. I invite you to share yours with me. All right, this is called Pull. My grandmother, 17, stopped at a window, expecting to fix her hair against her own reflection, but looked through the glass instead. My mother, 30, waited at the bar for DJ and his friends to arrive. Wanting to get away from a stranger, she reached out and grabbed my father's passing arm, pretending to know him. Sometimes you see someone who is lit up the same way grass vibrates during dark weather, spitting up all the sunlight it swallowed previously. Of course, the first poem was lit too, glowing in the earth. That's how we knew where to find it. And then the first time, and then keep finding it in smaller and smaller pieces henceforth, as when saying, okay, cowabunga, and tossing a towel over your shoulder. That's the poem. Or realizing your life has largely been scored by hold music. That's the poem. Or sometimes it rises up in all its sudden and heartbreaking symbolism, loud as a bell rung so hard it cracks, like my father, stepping out behind the pull of a divining rod in the yard, shy to admit he felt its path unfold, led, the same way my mother was to him, without logic, with love only leading, faith a door with no lock, an automatic sink you try and try to turn on, but which only starts to rush when you cede and step away. The thing I've noticed, so I'm like desperately in love, and it's impacting my poetry. Yeah, so there you go. Here's another poem. It's called One Reason I Love You. You strung our lights starting not at the outlet, but at the place on the wall you thought they would reach. That's the whole poem. It's just a fact. I was amazed to see this. Okay, this is a poem about a different kind of feeling. I don't like the title of it, so I'm totally open to feedback on this. Right now it's called Search for Word for Feeling. It's a pretty bad title. So yeah, weigh in later. All right. I am searching this morning for the exact word or image that explains my feeling today, and it comes up offline or buffering. How disappointing. When I could be a pond, a wrench, a socket, the blue mold on a raspberry, typhus, a coffin, knit socks, robbery, wildfire, a limousine crashing into a buffet, a miracle. Another way to describe it is, I'm on the other side of a door I can't open. I used to really envy men. It seemed to me like they had permission to tell it like it is, even if they rarely chose to. I remember one saying he wrote to process his feelings, and I wanted to slap him in the face. I had to lie all the time, saying my poetry's intellectual, my period doesn't affect me emotionally. How dare he be honest when I had to pretend? This is called When It Disappears from View. Removing wine from a grape is one thing. Another is how sometimes a letter replaces a word, which replaces the thing it meant to signify. Here I am in my skin and oils, every pound of me and my microbes, my outrageous beating heart, my rushing blood and temper. So far this is literature, where I'm the subject, but later you might call me S. The grapes became wine and could have become W, but instead became blood. Each element has its unelected speaker, but the Catholics got the wine speaking for itself. What if we could do that across the earth? Listen to things that don't speak like we do, the transubstantiation of the moss. In a small medieval city, Tom and I pass a church with a handwritten sign taped to the door. Have you discovered the quiet inward journey, it asks? T says, I've discovered the loud one. We're staying at a stranger's apartment across the street from a glass company. What if each corporation sought only to make their own name real again? If from 9 to 5 this glass company clocked in and worked only to break its word apart, let us touch the painful dust. If each instruction manual's only purpose was to convey manual, this is a manual, a world of words you could hold and know, like a penis, a neck, a fistful of hair. If I could wrap both my hands around my life and shake it. There was a former arrow of time and now there's a new arrow of time. What if we could dig those up from the dirt? Feel the pressure of the iron tip against a finger and press until it bursts. My blood. Would it help to hold my blood outside my skin? But then that's an easy way to die, isn't it? Better to keep the blood close. Bruno Latour says the image of our beautiful blue planet didn't unify us after all. Instead, we divided like cells. Everything we care for is so small when it disappears from view. Each time I look up as I write this, I'm surprised to see my own face in a mirror above the desk. Turns out as I write, I don't disappear from the room. It is my hand moving the pen, but who's making all these decisions? This is like the wine. There's the grape, the small blue planet we crush. 2 parts to a grape, the grape and its thin skin. We see the skin, but mostly it's something else. A ball of purple juice, I guess. I'm not in many arguments about the Anthropocene. I'm not in many arguments at all. I stay in bed until noon, shifting my legs around, breathing. This was written by S. Wait, this wasn't written by S, so who wrote it? Does each word maintain its life inside the poem? I don't know. I want to leave the next lines open for the birds who sing in a way that scares me. Their song is so light and beautiful, my bones want to snap through my skin to hear it more closely. Not to speak for my bones. Okay, bones, go ahead. I can feel them shaking a little. I don't know if any of you heard them say anything beyond that. I've never read like most of these poems aloud, so this is interesting, and my mouth's getting pretty dry. I'm really grateful to be here, and I'm so excited to hear Sue and Jordan's poems, and thank you, Mike and Antonio and Louis and Chuck and everybody. It's like really cool. This is a prose poem, something new for me. You know? Look at it, little chunk. Yeah. If anyone else thought they were a prophet as a child, feel free to come find me later. If you were getting prophetic dreams, I see you. You grew up in a chaotic home, didn't you? So did I. Okay. This is called Child Prophet. In the first dream, a voice in the clouds asked me to deliver a message. The earth was shaking. Rain was drilling down into it, and I was scared. No, I said, please, I can't do it. My pillow was wet when I woke up. Rainwater. How could I be such a coward? God asked me to be his prophet, and I said no. I was desperate for another chance. In the second dream, Jesus approached, stamping a red rubber stamp of himself on Joan's forehead as she passed. Hello, he said. Sorry for yelling. My voice is stuck like this. We were laughing. I loved Jesus. After a while, casual in his robes, he said, my dad asked me to ask you to reconsider. And I said, no, I'm sorry, I can't. No, no, no. How could I have possibly said no again? Every day was haze after that. My anger with myself so profound, I had to lock myself in the bathroom and cry and hold my breath. I was almost 12. My classmate was dying of cancer, coming to school in a wig, then disappearing again, and I was praying for her, using her first and last name in my prayers to be clear because she shared a first name with my sister. I believed in the power of prayer because I also prayed whenever my parents and brother would fight. He'd disappear, and I'd pray that he was all right and for him to return, and he would return. One day, impossibly, my classmate died. We were 13. A lavender river, cold new water. In the third dream, I was there before I arrived, sitting in a chair waiting for me. I sat down across from myself. Do you understand? I asked myself. I didn't. It was me all along, I said, and I sat there in my own company. No God, no message to deliver or refuse. This is called Phoropter. I don't know if any of you, I've got contact lenses in. Yeah, so I've got bad vision. Those things, but a lot of you have glasses. I see you. We all can't see. The phoropter's that thing, at the eye doctor, that big thing, and they're clicking it. That's the name of it. I didn't know, but this is called phoropter. She asked me to focus on the farmhouse, a blur of red at the end of a fuzzy path, then flipped a switch that sharpened it. A whole family flickered in and out of my ability to see them. The gate along the path turning into foam. The dirt road to a river of static until it was click, a fence again, click, the road again, music playing through open doors, and across the green cartoon grass, the pulse of a family I imagined through the glass. Super familiar. Oh yeah, I remember now how it felt to be the girl who drew this, working hard to color in the path, almost closing her eyes to do it. I've got 2 more poems I'll read, and it's just really nice to read them out loud. Thanks for this opportunity to hear what they're like. Now, tell me how to fix the title of that other one. Yeah, that's helpful. This is called Paper Making. We swished our hands inside the water, what Sarah calls troubling it, what the manual calls hogging it. If we messed up, we kissed the decal to the surface to release the mistake. My issue really came with the couching. I regret to inform you, cooching. I tried my invented tip-tap method to no avail. Finding my best cooches came from confidence. Or when we wet the receiving cloth so the wet paper might better recognize it as a place it was supposed to stay. Wet, recognize wet. We hogged into the night. Sean's paper green from the grass he boiled for 3 hours, which produced a black liquor. Mine, lavender blue, with some still legible torn pieces of an old zine in there. I'm a hippie, I thought, delighted. Having biked to yoga and then to Sean's for papermaking. Taken also lately to making cold brew in a big broken latch jar. I love this returning girl. From 12 to 15, I identified as a hippie, which meant listening for the secret message in a fish song, writing manifestos I stored in an old cigar box of dried flowers, and looking at my Jim Morrison poster erotically. Early in 16, I started to wear my brother's checkered belt and write and fold up confessional notes that tried to explain why I couldn't really bear to go on living. Late into 17, the blessing, I was medicated, awake, wearing costumes to school with my face painted like I'd died, scars and blood elaborated in makeup on the sleepless night prior. I don't remember feeling aware that other people could see me, surprised to discover the other kids at school found me scary. So much happened after that. Walking to the gas station barefoot in a nightgown without my glasses, locking the door again, chapters in the book of misunderstanding. Now though, adult woman, I ride my bike home in the dark, on the firefly-struck street, soft July night, heat of the earth and tar rising, gnats pelting my face as I go, cycling through all these girls I was before. The one who cheated, the one who died, the one who believed there was something better ahead of me, if I could only find a way to survive long enough to get there. And this will be my last poem. It's an ekphrastic poem after Paul Klee's painting The Goldfish, which is kind of a hilarious painting. I really recommend looking it up. It's really good, beautiful. So it's called The Goldfish by Paul Klee, and thank you again so much for having me. The Goldfish by Paul Klee. Someone bring this fish a soft bed on wet wheels. She looks absolutely blitzed. Every neighbor turns away. Every red and brown, pink, purple, and white fish swims away through the quiet town. But this electric nutcase degaff. From the darkest center of the ocean, a fizzing bundle of light high on seaweed. Go, zip, exist, go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chessy. That was great. I'm glad you pulled those new poems out of your book-shaped folders. That was good. All of my introductions are out of date, so that's, do with that what you will. Jordan Dunn, hi. This is the same. Of Jordan Dunn's notation, Cole Swenson remarks upon the way that, quote, he interweaves his own voice with so many others until they all get until they all gel into a single felted voice that is in itself a community. Dunn's is writing that frequently resides in the intertext and in a sort of resolute dailiness, a dedication to enlivening a concurrence of overlaid presence, what Cole Swenson refers to as Dunn's, quote, meticulous commitment to the moment, which creates a text porous as life, as memories weave, a record of the mind's movement through encounters with friends, ideas, texts, journals, and more. And here I'm just using Jordan's own words. Dunn creates a space where writing opens up as a process, more a power of attunement than a power of creation, and where, quote, there's an insistence on friendship in the circulation of the text. But also, which text is itself a companion. I'd agree with Dan Beachy Quick, quote, these are poems that leave us in our unbreakable solitude, less alone. Jordan Dunn is the author of Notation, Physical Geography as Modified by Human Action, as well as various chapbooks and ephemeral prints, including Common Names, Reactor Woods, and A Walk at Doolittle State Preserve. He lives with his family in Madison, Wisconsin, where he edits and publishes the amazing, I added that part, Oxeye Press. Please welcome Jordan Dunn.
Thanks, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I'm just going to read one long piece, so I need to know if it's good, so thank you. Many years ago, I don't know how many years ago, did Robert Grenier read here at Woodland Pattern? 5 to 10, something like that. And I remember when he got up to talk, he said that morning he had taken a jog along along the Milwaukee River. And I just always thought that was a really beautiful image of Grenier running along the river. So I said, someday I'll read at Woodland Pattern and I'll take a jog along the river. So this morning I woke up at the Plaza Hotel and took a jog up to the river and along the lake. And 2 Milwaukee residents gave me a high five as I was jogging. They were jogging also. And they were not together. So 2 separate humans decided to do this. So just all ties together really nicely for me. Thank you, Chessy. So I'm working on a new project, or I can't call it a project, you're not supposed to do that. I'm working on a new manuscript, and it's similar to Notation, but it has periods, so that makes it a little bit different than that book. But it has 3 long sections, so I've just excerpted from the first section and from the second section. So I'm just going to see how it goes. So thanks for being here. Thanks to Woodland Pattern for being amazing. I feel like so at home, surrounded by Anne's art and so many familiar faces. This is called The Morning of 3 Poems. After Liza leaves for school, I sit down to read through my journals and make selections for the composition that begins in last spring's wood thrush song. The song arrived through narrow figures of sunlight quivering between aspen leaves, which stand out to me now by the brilliance of their remainder in my memory. This image mixes with the imprint of Liza walking down the driveway with her cello case on her back, and the uncommon shadow cast by the streetlight upon the damp, matted sugar maple leaves that silhouetted a combination of daughter and cello, turning the corner and disappearing from my view. According to my journals, 2 years ago on this day, I sat alongside Kintaro, and they showed me the book that read, "Your life theme is to test all the limits of experience in this world, and then to find an inner stillness for reflection that supports your process of renewal." That same morning, Kintaro hosted brunch at their apartment, and a group of us ate in their dining room. Fig plants grew in the sunny south-facing windows, and landscape paintings adorned the walls. There was a round dining table lowered close to the floor where we sat on pillows and yoga mats. The previous evening, Kintaro had prepared potions for each of the guests that contained blends of essential oils and herbs. And right before the food was served, we took turns depositing drops of our bespoke potions on one another's wrists, So while we talked and enjoyed our meal together, there were pleasant, faint wafts of fragrance that accompanied our movements when raising or lowering a utensil or reaching across the table to select a dish. My potion, named Brahms, composed of hints of bergamot and cardamom, could even be detected later that evening as I worked up on sewing Judah's chapbooks. I never told him this, but there could likely be a trace of Brahms in many of his antiquarian historiographies. Last month, TJ said that while he was in his father's hospital room, he pressed gently with his finger against his father's forehead some of the holy oil that would help him pass into heaven. I don't believe in that heaven, he said, but the ritual felt important, and I realized I have no ritual practice for my own idea of the afterlife or even for my own death. As we stood in his living room with boxes of his father's possessions stacked on the far wall, his story made me remember my experience in the hospital room where my father almost died. The way he clutched my forearm and squeezed it tight when the enormous pain welled up, squinting his eyes and clenching his jaw. And in between the swelling waves of pain, he told me how this was what his mom did when she was dying, how he didn't understand the reason for it at the time, but now he knew she was gripping his arm to find a small relief among the wired medical machines and the deep fog of her dementia. I have often wondered about those months when I was a child and he would travel back and forth to Michigan to visit her. Over the years, I pieced together that she no longer knew my father's name, nor while he was sitting beside her hospice bed, though at times I like to imagine there was some knowledge in her touch that extended beyond verbal contours of recognition. And if I could put aside my self-control, that self-control taught to me by my father, I might ask him about his experience and receive a small amount of the burden that he must carry himself from day to day. Jenna Osman writes, understanding the mechanics of the body required getting rid of the body. Thus, a body reduced and transformed to points and lines in a system of flow, a body drawing its own trajectory, its own output. Suddenly, the trace of the moment's movement was graphed and preserved for later study. A still frame from a film is 1/24th of a second. A photograph feels like a longer duration to me, even though both a still frame and a photograph are essentially the same material object, where light has permanently etched itself upon a thumb-sized rectangle of film. Is there a difference here other than the preparation and presentation of time? I YouTube Brackage's Mothlight, and among the pirated results, for which I am thankful, is an ad that reads, "How to put a stop to procrastination and start living the life you want. In this free training, you will learn how to transform your life." I do not click on the white man standing beneath palm trees with his mouth agape mid-sentence, but instead I watch a digital reproduction of Mothlight and consider how it is a free training that will transform my life. Like the unexpected but familiar bluette damselfly who landed on my canoe paddle while I floated among bulrush and spatterdock, the reflection of the sun's position on the low wavelets passing upon the light wind's passage across the lake. It is the morning of the poem. I have been working on a composition that reconfigures my writings from the month of May, in which many of the passages written in May are revisions of writing that I completed the previous October, being 1 year ago relative to the present moment's writing. The main concern has stayed constant. What I tell myself I'm trying to do is create a container for all life to fall into. Maybe not all life, but any life that chooses to enter, or that doesn't mind being transcribed, so that the poem, being about nothing, can also be about everything. The robin has moved from the lawn up to a branch in the crabapple. A male cardinal is set on the same branch, and the two look toward the street as a delivery truck passes. A female cardinal joins the pair, but keeps some distance as a squirrel explores the garden beneath an interrupted fern. I have not yet transcribed my nightmare from 3:06 a.m., when I shot awake in a sweat that had soaked through my clothes and dampened the bedding beneath. The terror's resultant sharpness pooled at the base of my spine as I bent to strip naked in the darkness. I dried my body with a towel, put on a fresh shirt, spread the towel over the damp sheet, and inhaled the night air that filled my lungs with the panic of my waking as the knowledge of the nightmare's completion arrived in my mind before the full body became aware. I glanced at the gibbous moon waxing through a gap in the curtains, and I stepped toward the windowsill and picked up a river stone I gathered from the creek where the trout swam beside the hot spring and the western dipper bobbed in the small rapids. The stone's several fissures were made apparent by the moonlight that crossed through the window and entered the bedroom where I stood with my mind replaying the nightmare image of my childhood body pointing a rifle at my adult body while we stood in the forest clouded with smoke. If I were to listen to Lisa's advice, the advice in her poems, I would stop here, walk outside, and lie down in the front yard beneath the birds. And the first person to speak to me would be the first person to discover me, and life would begin anew. Spring. I sit on the patio between the variegated shade that patterns the wind's movement through the silver maple boughs, and the sunspots that find their way through the leaves to illuminate the pages of the 100,000 places that I am reading at the table. Autumn paws the nested leaves of a hosta at the far corner of the garden shed. Chipmunks have taken up residence there, along with the community of sweet Sicily and ostrich fern. Earlier, I pinched the flower from a sweet Sicily plant and pressed it with my fingers, and I can still detect the pleasing scent of the anise-like oil that I've carried around with me all morning, thinking time, a southerly breeze, a full stop. Brad's apple tree flowers and paints its own spring without my intervention. And as I walk toward it, I admire the leaves shifting positions in the light breeze. I think, there is the leaf holding light again, holding my life again. Whatever is lifted by the wind is dropped again into a calm, slightly ahead of itself. There is the leaf holding life again, holding my light again. There is the light slightly ahead of what the wind calms. There is the leaf lifted by the wind's light, holding my life again. Items to hold at eye level, above the horizon, toward the position of the sun. The wing of a dragonfly, the small translucid dots on the undersides of the leaves of St. John's wort, a frond of bulblet fern, an aspen leaf, the watermark on old sheets of cotton paper, a maple key, a cardinal feather, a green bottle found in lake bottom muck, the moscatel print that reads, "The self is a damselfly." I am unable to begin typing, so I read Swenson's On Walking On. Valser who sings under his breath to the grasses as he walks on. I feel the warm wind of October move through the sunroom door. I wonder if I should have my students read a passage of Swenson's book that is concerned with intersectionality, those points where we pass a stranger, or perhaps I pass you while we walk in opposite directions across a bridge or through a narrow passageway. We walk very close to one another, and it feels as though our arms brush against one another, despite not touching. Then we are off again, our proximity is dispersed, and we are released back into our private spheres. Maybe this is what Valser was thinking in Swenson's poem as he sang softly to the grasses while walking beside them. He felt himself to be at an intersection with each individual blade of grass, and he sang to touch them all with his voice. both those with which he was intersecting at any single moment in time, and those which were at their own point of intersection with a being other than himself, wherein his voice, moving low among the grasses like an undersong at the level of the insect, could become a soft delay for the plurality of beings that temporarily pause their daily work to listen in on his private melody. I see this day, and outside it there is nothing. Who could take that away from me? And when this day fades, I will fade along with it, a thought, a certainty that enraptures me. But each minute, when I stayed without moving in a corner of the room, the cool of the morning and the stability of the ground made me breathe and rest on gladness. So that's that. Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks so much, Jordan. It's wonderful. And Susan Lander's latest book, What to Carry into the Future, opens with an epigraph from Rebecca Solnit, quote, "What we call a city is a succession of wildly different places in the same location." And Landers captures that plurality of experiences by moving through New York City's subways, or as a pedestrian, a sidewalk naturalist, writing into a, quote, continuous aftermath. And to commute, etymologically, is to change altogether, as Sue Landers' own perception is altered through the act of commuting as a writing practice, seeing, quote, the subway as a frame for refining one's vision, a means of focusing one's seeing. And so too, as readers, we may have our own perceptions changed, not just of New York City, though, as Brian Tier notes, this is a, quote, 21st century pan to place. But the idea of the cityscape as an often inhospitable place, given the exigencies and disasters that undergird capitalism, quote, this is chaos by design. But we can see anew how we might inhabit such spaces, how we might commute the ways in which we exist together in the world, as Brian Tier, again, says it. Landers models, quote, an ethics of attention that offers an alternative to and respite from capitalism's unequal, earth-destroying logics, and opts for repair as resistance. Susan Landers is a poet and pedestrian. She's the author of 4 poetry collections. Her latest, What to Carry into the Future, emerged from writing every New York City subway from end to end. Set within the subways, streets, and waterways, the collection charts the continuous aftermath of catastrophe alongside the city's many pleasures. Her poems have appeared in Poem a Day, the Brooklyn Rail, the Offing, and elsewhere. She is a former executive director of Lambda Literary and lives in Brooklyn, and wonderful to have you here. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks to everyone for coming, and thanks to Woodland Pattern for having me. I'm very grateful to be in this space. Really, really happy to be here, to be reading with Jordan and Chessy. Your readings were delightful, especially to be here in this final season. It's very special, and it's not lost on me. And thank you to all the staff who actually make all of this possible. So I'm gonna because we were in this like land of Lorraine Niedecker, and Panda Place came up and keeps coming up for me over and over again. I'm gonna read a poem. I'm gonna start with a poem from my last book, Frankenstein, which is a book about the neighborhood I grew up in Philadelphia, and this is my paean to place. And the place was brick. Corner, porch, road, cold radiator row, my life in a city of brick. My mother and I, born in lines of mud and fire and red. My father along train tracks after time clocks clocked her legs at the station, a seam to follow. He bore the weight of lead type and failed strikes, to tend a line of babies that filled their row house of brick. He saw his wife fall to pieces watching dishes, she who worried stains on plates till she broke. I mourn her. Ill at ease in the kitchen, always working, a steady working, long after her children were fed and in bed, tucked in like sardines. Did she giggle as a girl? He helped her mind the children, carry food from the store, the canned fruit, the soup. They'd make use of every scrap, a splash of milk on rice to make a pudding. With little, they kept us full. He tried to mend her head and hold our hands to keep it all together. He worked. His hands cast lines of type, magazine characters of molten lead. He knew printing. While one line was cast, he'd start the next, to keep up with the work till it ran out, to be counted on, a new dead means of production. But he could not, like a slug, bend, once cool. Again and again, he was struck by layoffs. As to their bright new baby, the last in line, so late, his 8th, a heart can't haul such weight in middle age, all the walking, the waking, a long line of babies, too heavy to pick up his shiny penny, so many pennies in his thoughts. I grew in crowded rooms and concrete, skated on lakes of brick and scabbed. Grew reading on radiators, flesh pressed into iron. Grew on routes, the trains, the lines inscribed in memory, and now I astray, keyboard for claw, without pause, wander my history of brick. To bring forth a city, sing its repeating. Markers. A moment of stillness at 7, and so young. 7 years, the one death, my one dress, a dusky mauve rose saved for those events that mark a life, a right. A line of people greeting, a line of people grieving, the man who whispered, I never saw him angry, in my ear. Solemnities. What kind of stone to place on his grave unless a pillow to rest? This strap hanger in life, in death, he lay in wait of her to join him in bed again. How much less am I in the dark than they? Ritual held sway in them. Scripture, like brick, grows strong in repeating. But in those who splinter, schist, in us exists an impulse to disrupt the things we thought we knew, like a city full of histories that shift. I go away and come back again, never really knowing these streets named for no one or madmen. Who were they? She who made the beds, he who rode the train, they who left their handprints down the wall. I, with block rattle in my bones, aware that at any moment a light can be burned out or shot. Oh, this constructed life. Do not lose time lost in memory, so easily ruined by inattention or intention. Build it up again, in little pieces, all that we carry or are coming to know. True, I possess a sense of threat. Cats, mouths heavy with birds at the door. Memory, that body where we learn all of our living. But now, this body, far from hardship, recalls also lightning bugs in the yard and knows it was not always torturous under the streetlight. Here I am, after all. I walk and write and scratch my name into histories of brick. Okay, so then 10 years later, I wrote another book. And so What to Carry into the Future came out last year this week. So this is like totally birthday celebration. Thank you. Super cool. And so this book emerged after I wrote every subway line from end to end. And what came out was this triptych to New York City, 3 sections, one about subways, another about these treescapes in my neighborhood, and then lastly about New York City waterways. And the first section is all about the trains, and it's just one long poem, and I'm going to read an excerpt from that. And that section of the book is called My Quotidian Icon. So this might be a love letter. These may be my vows. About that prenup we never ironed out, it doesn't matter. You always win, New York. You always get whatever you want. But I can still lay tracks inside you, reinscribe in lines the old names we have for each other, Atlantic Pacific, how the maiden names stick, familiar as an ocean along the elevated track. Panaderia, Taekwondo, the Verrazano, dungarees and smokestacks, nail salon and scaffold, right down to your edges where the dragonflies and sunflowers wave monstrous to tomatoes outside the chop shop, an empty Listerine bottle, and the smell of fresh baked bread over Coney Island Creek, where the men gutting porgies for chum turn to me and say, "They are big and beautiful, just like you." Under a summer sky quilted by cranes, a woman tears open an air conditioner. And it's a beautiful day for a game of running around and around to get home. The doors open and a man says he doesn't want to sleep on the train anymore. The doors open and a stranger asks me if I have children. And I stopped myself from telling her that I was so busy working, I hardly noticed when the blood stopped releasing from my body, how far away I was from the workings of my body. While I was working in a city full of bodies moving like a hurricane, the doors open and the streets are flooded in Texas. The doors open and people are waving from rooftops. The doors open and a president pardons a sheriff who videotaped women in bathrooms, the women arrested for not being born here. The doors open for a man in a, I'm not arguing, I'm just explaining I'm right, t-shirt. And a woman asks me for help with her naturalization tests. She asks me to read aloud the words, "Are you willing to take up arms in defense of this country?" The doors open and a man in a Vegas hotel room kills 60 people with 15 semi-automatic rifles. Last night there was a hurricane, then another one. Some of this isn't metaphorical. Look up before it gets darker. The clouds are gorgeous and damning. To get far away by not stopping underground in the dark, I like that, to be so far gone. But then a horn blares on the track, a long wail. Warnings down the car, then a staggering. Warnings for the workers in the tunnels working to keep the water at bay from us, the we who curse the slowing down, the stumbling that trips up the pace of our rushing, that keeps us at bay from this earth and our bodies. 10 days before the hurricane, the president lifted restrictions protecting cities from floods. This isn't prophecy, it's design. Climate change deniers want enough of us at risk enough that they will never grow rich enough selling us their toxic solutions. A flashing of lights, a clattering of tongues. This local just turned express. What are the words of that song again? I crashed your car into the bridge. I don't care. I love it. Rain, slick city of vanish and stick. I just want to ride your rocking with all the other empaths and nanas, witches and cynics, the pharmacists, the squatters, the haulers of stuff, as if there were no time left but all of it, a continuous present attending to the unanswerable question of this city. Later, in Coney Island, I meet the great-granddaughter of the man who made the whip, and the tickler, Lisa, with shooting stars down her arms. She tells me how Trump's father bought Steeplechase Park in the 1960s and threw this big party where bikini-clad women handed out bricks, to bust out the glass of the park's magnificence. He told his guests to break Steeplechase Park into bits. The hurricanes approaching the Caribbean this week have surpassed all established parameters. Winds so strong, they are technically beyond Category 5, and yet there is no Category 6. There is no Category 6, and yet the 185-mile-per-hour winds of Irma exist. Chaos might mean without a library. Dumbstruck, a leveling. Chaos, an unpredictable behavior appearing random, can actually be owed to small changes in conditions over time. I'm riding a train, the G train, whose window is held in place with duct tape. I remember after 9/11, or maybe it was the blackout, or Hurricane Irene, or Sandy, I forget, but I remember they told us to buy duct tape. I don't know what we were supposed to use it for. Everything, I suppose. And we are. Rocking at Atlantic Pacific, back again at the impossible meeting of oceans, an alert on my phone announces an attack downtown. 8 people plowed down on a bike path by a man in a truck on Halloween. And someone says, there was never a better time for a parade. We are getting very good at living in grief. 2 women sit down where a man had just been sleeping beneath an ad for knowing your rights. One arm of the state advising how not to get struck down by a different arm of the state. I'm on my way to a rally for elevators. Most stations without them, even in evacuation zones where people are expected to go in the event of a hurricane. As the protesters gathered, a man yells from his passing car, "Job haters!" And I knew I was free to write and ride this light. Maybe this time is completely unreal. Maybe this time is the realist, like the crowd at Times Square, breaking out spontaneously into Bodak yellow. A bald man grimaces as he rises from his seat at 36th Street, where 4 years from now, a man will open fire on the train during rush hour, and yet somehow I still have faith. There will always be another train behind this one. Up the stairs and over the ridge, I'm eating chicken shawarma with lemonade for $11 when a cop over his loudspeaker says, "Go back to school," and 4 boys on the overpass break into a run. All of a sudden, it's Christmas time, and 2 days since that bomb went off in that grim little hallway in Times Square. You know the one? The one with the messages in the ceiling, go to work, go to bed, etc. It's too real for some people. They can't stand it. They can't stand to look up. Today, Times Square smells like wet paint, a glossing over. A woman on the S train says, "I need a seat. I have cancer. You can't tell by looking at me, but I do. Do you want to see my port?" A man in a "I'm broke bitch" t-shirt sits under Major Jackson's poem that reads, "All we want is a metropolis of Sundays, an empire of hand-holding." The woman with cancer tells me to write about all the nice people on the subway, okay? It's 10:40 a.m. on December 5th, 2017, where 7th Avenue and Broadway meet. A bride in the crosswalk gets her picture taken beneath the sign over the McDonald's that reads, "Impeach." Spectacle bundle. Like trash inside an oyster shell, a little iridescent map of survival. Next to a sign that reads "Art for Food or Gold," a man blows his nose into an American flag. How many more stops? So many of us doing the math from here to there. I'm on my way to the cemetery, where a security guard tells me, "This place gets smaller the longer you're here." I'm eating a fried fish sandwich for $13 on City Island, across from a potter's field, where in 2 years, 1 in 10 dead New Yorkers will be buried after COVID surges. But before all that happens, candy striper smokestacks and a song down the car, I'm high on elevated tracks again. The doors open and Queens is a library. I'm blushing under the sheer, shiny globe of it all, beyond the sunny side of Hellgate, past the Junction, the Reservoir, and Silver Cup Studios. This poem is a time plaza, a cathedral of vaulted grime for anyone who has ever found, borrowed, stolen, or made the time to take the long way round. I take the Q to the S, to the C, to the J, and still get to Jamaica with 7 minutes to spare to catch the last Z train of the day. And there I wait until an old gray train pulls into the station, my last train. But on its emblem is the letter J. So I asked the conductor if there's a Z behind this one, and he says, "This J is the Z." It's the same train. They're all the same. Get on. Thank you. New York's so great and so much bullshit. I'm gonna close with one poem from the end of the book, which is a sonnet sequence. It's 15 sonnets, each about different New York City waterway, and they're introduced by an explanatory prose paragraph. I don't think it's a prose poem. I think it's just prose. Let's try to contextualize the place for folks who may not know the place. So this is Gowanus Canal, and the Gowanus is an industrial canal in Brooklyn. Development around the Gowanus has been swift since a rezoning in 2021, so seismic that some locals have wondered if the neighborhood's eccentricities will survive. Going up around the canal, on land classified as brownfields, are dozens of high-rises with limited affordable housing. For decades, gas plants, tanneries, and oil refineries dumped toxic waste into the Gowanus. Declared a Superfund site in 2010, the actual cleanup began 10 years later and will take many more to complete. Today, an ongoing source of pollution in the canal is combined sewer overflow. That combination of raw sewage and stormwater that strains the sewers so much that the system's fail-safe is to redirect it into waterways. A man-made wetland on one corner of the canal, branded Sponge Park, filters stormwater runoff to some degree. This reminds me of Lorene Niedecker calling her watery world soft and serious. Lorene, reinscribing the places she loved. A creek off the bay, a salt marsh. There had been oysters. The water brackish, named after some say a Canarsie leader. Then grids atop coal ash and trash. The carving of channels for industry heavy. A century of discharge, today's black mayonnaise. Bankside, a condo with Superfund terrace, excavators in the canal now, a dredging. Beside the wildflowers in the ballasts, hibiscus on the lift bridge, and the bushes teeming with rose hips. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sue. One more time for Sue, Jordan, Chessy. Just incredible readings all around. This was lovely. Thank you so much. The fun truly has started. I didn't mean to make you spit. But yeah, no, thank you all so much for being here and everyone out there. Come back and see us again for upcoming events for this evening, and stick around, enjoy the good company. Good night. Thanks.